Lawful good Paladin goes too far after becoming chosen one. Hello everyone. So the story is a few years old, and recently, after watching tons of Crick Crab and Den of the Drake, I wanted to share a few of my own RPG horror stories with you all. This first one's a bit long, but it's one of my most recent ones. Haven't had a group meltdown like this since. So this story involves 5 people. All of us seasoned players and role players coming into this game. First, our previous roommate of a couple years, the DM. A good friend of ours, half-elf wild magic sorcerer. My husband, human rogue. Myself, tiefling bard. And lastly, the antagonist of this particular story, the DM's sister, a gold dragon-born paladin of Bahamut. I don't know if I said that right. So, to begin, DM asked if me and a few others would like to take place in their homebrew 5th edition game. I was very interested, having had the itch to play for a while now. After gathering a group, DM told us to make characters that were interesting and outside of our normal builds. The personality types and the more detail in life we give them, the better. I've never gotten to play a bard, so I went with a tiefling bard that ran her own brothel within the city called the Blooming Rose, that had a unique business practice. My hubby played a human rogue, and our friend played a half-elf wild magic sorcerer. They were going to play as brothers and the children of the crime lord of the city, both donning a sort of wise guys style theme, the two of them acting the part, complete with silly accent and sometimes over-the-top mafioso demeanor. DM's sister chose a golden dragon-born paladin with a very stereotypical do-gooder attitude. The law is the law, and if you break it, you are scum. DM loved them and gave us the time and date we would play our first session. In our first game, DM established how the world works, and the city we were in, etc. She opened with me taking one of my employees to the local church for healing. That's where I met Paladin. We conversed a bit to get things started. Them asking about my business, if it was very sinful, and I would explain how I ran most of it. That there's nothing inherently wrong with it, and that I was just providing a safe and fun experience for those in need of company. If Paladin's religion said that they weren't allowed to partake, that was fine. We don't force anything on anyone. The priest came out and told us my employee will be fine and needed rest. She had been assaulted by a customer. I thanked them. Paladin asks if they may tag along for a bit to talk. Since they found me to be an interesting person, I agreed, and we left the church to walk about town. Changing scene to the brothers, DM painting the scene of them both going through an alley, talking about business to themselves, in a relatively quiet part of town, while making rounds for protection money, information on goods, etc. When they are jumped by what looks to be a couple of thugs, but ended up being a pair of assassins. Combat ensued. The DM then says that Paladin and myself could hear the sounds of battle nearby, so we started to rush towards it. However, as they were about to finish the fight, Sorcerer's wild magic triggers. They roll and get the fireball spell, absolutely destroying the thugs. Scared, the two ran just as we arrived at the scene. All I saw was the charred bodies and 2 figures fleeing the scene. Paladin raised their weapon and declares, "Murderers!" They yell that they chase to try and kill them. DM looked panicked, and I jumped in, stopping Paladin. She got pissed, telling me I was letting murderers get away. I responded that we have no idea what just happened here. I asked to poke around, and DM has me roll perception, ending in me taking notice in the charred bodies' hands were drawn weapons made for an assassin. After explaining that, I go on to motion to the scene, explaining that just us two probably weren't suited to be taking on someone that could blow up an entire area in one fell swoop, nor was it our job to do so. Paladin grumbled and put their weapon away. DM sighed in relief. We went to find a guard, explained what we heard and saw before directing them to the scene. Not much later, Rogue and Sorcerer were later sent to the docks by their father. Happy to hear they were okay, but he was also dealing with a mountain of guild business and needed them to find out why some shipments of various things have gone missing from a local warehouse by the docks, while a local guard told Paladin and myself the same. The medicines meant for clinics were being pilfered from the warehouse, and if we could catch them, we would help a great many people. We meet at the docks, fight a few thieves, and after we introduce ourselves to one another, forming a loose party from it. However, Paladin was not thrilled with this. She somehow knew that Sorcerer was the person fleeing from the crime scene. Also that they were high-ranking in the Thieves Guild, connected, and to the crime lord of the city. Both DM and myself reminded Paladin she would not know they were criminals, or that they were connected to the crime lord at all. Afterwards, while adventuring together, Paladin spent every chance she could to try to frame both Sorcerer and Rogue and get them into trouble. It never worked, but the hostility was quickly wearing on our nerves. Sorcerer, Rogue, and myself were irritated by her, but we were enjoying the world and the story, so we kept going. The next few sessions, we investigated the disappearances of villagers. This led to a cult in a smaller town quite a ways away. A small town full of oddly happy but normal acting people. At least until we started poking around, and the town quickly devolved into a run-or-die scenario of illithids around every corner looking to try and silence the party before we could warn anyone. Which in turn led to finding out we were being invaded by illithids who were pretty much pulling an invasion of the body snatchers. The session ending with us barely escaping back out of the town and into the wilderness. I should take a moment to explain our party dynamic. Rogue was the guy that cracked locks, safes, lips, and bones when it called for it, and cared immensely for his younger half-brother, the Sorcerer. Sorcerer was a powerful, still budding caster and brains between the two brothers who aspired to make his brother, Rogue, and his father proud. Paladin was a tank who acted as though they were the party face while disparaging all of us. Then me, as a smooth talker, and as time went on, healer and tank. Why was I the healer and another tank? Because Paladin made clear she wouldn't heal criminal scum like them, nor come to their defense in any way. If they die, the city will be clean of 2 more pieces of refuse. The thing about the brothers is that they, and even the guild their father ran, had a code. Don't take from people that can't go without it kind of code. They kept other more ruthless gangs and organizations from taking root in the city. But Paladin didn't care. They were criminals, and criminals aren't worth protecting, even if they contribute to quiet and safer streets. During this time, the DM had pivotal points happen for all of us. The brother's father had fallen ill and proclaimed his son Rogue will take over the guild if anything happens. Sorcerer found out more about themselves and their elven lineage and began working to gain more control of the very chaotic magic they possessed and knew little about. I had become quite familiar and friendly with royalty, most of all the current ruling queen. As for Paladin, DM said they were given divine dreams from their god, who told them they were his chosen one, making them popular within the religious sect and becoming their representative. Of course, the second she was the chosen, every chance she had, she made sure to express this and make it known that her word was absolute, because she is chosen like an anime protagonist, as well as making many deals behind the scenes to eventually ensure the arrest and or straight-up execution of both Rogue and Sorcerer's characters. Needless to say, she pretty much took on the I'm the main hero of the story attitude, dictating what we were and were not allowed to do, again making all of us irritated. But we played nice. The plot was getting good, and we just figured that sooner or later her ego would deflate. Oh, we were wrong. At one point, I had found critical information that Rogue and Sorcerer needed to know, and so I dragged Paladin with me to one of their hideouts, not thinking of the risk just showing up there. A failure on my part, admittedly. Once we got there, I knocked on the door, requesting to see Rogue and/or Sorcerer. They came out shortly and expressed anger of just showing up like this. It was a risk to them and the party. I apologized profusely and gave them the information. Paladin kept oddly quiet through this. We calmed down and decided to use a method of communication through guild agents. I understood and offered my brothel as a meeting location from now on. The DM suggested some of the guild's messenger birds, since they were familiar with both rogue and sorcerer, as well as being a good way we can keep contact if needed, without needing to show up there when the party is split and off doing other things. Paladin and I leave together, however, sometime later after we split up to do some light shopping. Paladin decided to go back later, march up, and try breaking into the hideout, while Rogue and Sorcerer were having a very heartwarming scene with their father, and generally a good bit of roleplay. DM asked what Paladin was hoping to accomplish, to which she quipped, "To catch them all in the act of doing illegal things." Paladin fails to open the door, and opted to just kick it down and shout in frustration once inside. "I'm going to turn you all into the city guards and have this place shut down. Hives of villainy have no place in my city," they proclaimed triumphantly. Paladin was laughed at by Rogue and Sorcerer above board as Paladin got shot at, and hit quite a few times, by the people watching the door with ranged weapons, and were told off by both Rogue and Sorcerer. "We are supposed to be a team, and you are not only putting us in danger by trying to expose us, but also the effort to stop the invasion. Go back to your church and butt out of the guild's business. You don't see us dropping by the church to start trouble, so don't do it with us." Wounded and annoyed, she left. As we investigated, we found out the Illithids had already taken over some high-ranking positions, including many of the heads in the royal court. We got a private audience with the queen explaining to her the situation, showing our evidence. The queen explained she had some idea of what was happening for some time, but had no idea how bad things were until now. Getting on in years, she expressed she does not feel she was capable of dealing with such a threat. Her lack of action has already brought this to the point that it had. She asked what we felt we should do, and most of us came to the same conclusion. We needed to fight the Illithids, and show we will not just stand by and let them kill us and take over. At this point, the queen says, "Each of you have quite a lot of pull in the city. I'm going to summon a meeting and announce I will be stepping down as queen. And with no heir, it will be up to you to put someone you know, you can trust, in my place by convincing the remainder of the court." We were taken aback by this. None of us had planned to suddenly get the chance to be ruler of an entire kingdom. Paladin smugly says they are the chosen one of their god, a far more noble role than being a paltry queen. We rolled our eyes and discussed what to do. Rogue and Sorcerer refused because of their position. It would not look good to have shady people like them on the throne. It was decided I would take over. The common people loved me, and my own connections with the everyday people, and the dirt I had on nobles that often made a habit of visiting my establishment, made it the best choice, and the easiest. DM called it there, and told us to brush on Parliament procedure, and to be ready for anything in 2 weeks. We discussed after game, during this time, our plans. Rogue and Sorcerer would get Manifest ready to show proof that not only can I help supply an army, but was already set to help do so. Paladin was to bring the church members as both a demonstration of support and as backup. If the Illithids were to try to escape, they would be ready to stop them. I was to present myself as a strong leader and give a rousing speech to show I could not only lead a nation, but that I would not let any monsters try and stop me, no matter who they think they were, in order to not only inspire, but intimidate any of them in court. 2 weeks were gone in a flash. It came the big game. I am unsure what happened in between the time, but I guess DM thought doing all that research before game was a bit too much, or maybe DM just got too busy. But when the game took place, the queen stepped down. Everyone was shocked. She appointed my bard as a successor. I gave a few points about what's going on, what resources I had, and what was planned, and they all voted and agreed for me to rule. We all were a bit disappointed, but rolled with it. As members left, a few stayed behind, doing the evil slow clap. We confronted them, but wonder why they approved this. After a villainous monologue about playing their cards just yet would be foolish. They transformed to their true selves, and the battle started. We fought hard and brought all but one down. However, before we could deliver a final blow, they summoned a portal, sending us to an unknown location. It was dark, cold, and floating above us was a grotesque illithid-like creature in a giant sphere of water. It was phase 2. The dice gods were on our side, and we just barely survived. As it fell on the ground, it relinquished a runic stone of some kind. Sorcerer walked over and touched it. DM tells him he sees other worlds that fell to the invaders. However, it seemed they were not out to just conquer. They were running from something and trying to hide in the other worlds. Suddenly, a portal opens. Sorcerer asks to do an arcana check on the stone, gets a natural 20. DM explains it's an anchor and that we have a choice. Destroy it and deal with the illithids here, as well as whatever is coming, or throw it into the portal and make it another world's problem, as over time, the illithids would be pulled from our world. DM warned us there was no guarantee they would not return eventually. Above board, it did not take long to decide what to do. We agreed to destroy it and try to conquer the illithid threat and do our best to prepare for what else was coming. Rogue says he will leave this to Sorcerer and the party to figure out. Before deciding to go through the other portal to scout where it would drop us off, leaving me, Sorcerer, and Paladin alone, here's where shit hits the fan. Sorcerer wanted to strike up a roleplay about coming to the decision. Back in character, he said perhaps we should take a vote or discuss the options we had, and the pros and cons. Before he could finish his full thoughts, Paladin interrupts. We need to destroy it. Hand it over now, or I'll take it. Sorcerer shakes his head and says we can talk about this a little bit. Paladin doesn't wait another moment to roll to grapple and knocks the runic stone from Sorcerer's hand. I want to make note, Sorcerer was defenseless, as she also proceeded to also strike him repeatedly afterwards. I rush over to stop her, and to heal him using my last spell slot. She throws him aside, points her weapon at me, and states, "You try to stop me or help him, I'll kill you too." Sorcerer's had enough of Paladin's crap in this moment. In truth, we all did. He is upset and dumbfounded by what had just happened. Rogue is as well. Paladin smiles smugly and declares, triumphantly, I proceed to go over and smash the stone. Both of them say that Paladin has just pretty much ruined the DM's game by ensuring neither of their characters will ever work with them again. Sorcerer, because she had effectively just curb-stomped him to an inch of his life, and when Rogue learns that neither will he. Effectively, ensuring the war effort would lose his supply chains, scouting power, and contracts of the Thieves' Guild. DM and myself are still just left just dumbstruck by what happened. DM sighs and decides to end the session there, probably to try and work on what she was going to do about this. Paladin grabs her stuff, thanks DM for the great session, and leaves. DM in shock just stands and staggers to her room. I talk to Rogue and Sorcerer. Sorcerer makes it clear he will not play with her again. She ruined any trust they had of her in character, and any fun he had role-playing their characters together every chance she had. Rogue and I agreed, also royally pissed off. We also decided if DM wanted to go on, we will, but not with Paladin. Next day, DM asks to talk to me. She asked me if there was anything she could do as DM and Paladin's sister to reconcile things as a group so the group could move on. I explained that Paladin has caused a very large rift in the group by flying off the handle, especially since DM didn't try to stop her or intervene. I explained that short of saying, no, you can't do that, and I won't allow it, she really couldn't have either, and we don't blame DM. We were all upset with Paladin and her decision to just hulk out and beat up a fellow PC. I go on to say that if things were to continue, Paladin would need to apologize to the group, and to her as a DM for derailing the game for what amounted to, I am the chosen one, we do what I say or else, tantrum. But I didn't think even that would work. Rogue, Sorcerer, and I were fed up with how Paladin was acting. It went beyond just snide remarks about them being criminals, and at every turn and trying to have them locked up. It was disruptive and derailing to every session have at least one point where we must stop progression to indulge Paladin's lust for trying to fuck them over. Now, I already talked with both Sorcerer and Rogue. Both had agreed to play again if she is out, which, given how she behaved, both in and out of character, she attacked one of her allies who, despite her character's crap, always fought alongside them. one who was defenseless in that moment and not offering any physical resistance. If that's not breaking her oath to remain honorable and just, I don't know what is. So not only would her God turn his back on her, so would the church once they found out about her actions. And believe me, they would find out, because I would tell them she was dragging their honor through the mud with her behavior. DM looked at me and explained that they already talked to Paladin, and Paladin said she did nothing wrong, and she didn't feel she needed to apologize, that it was what her character would do. DM went on to explain she didn't want to play without her, because it was her sister after all, which is fine, but the rest of us wouldn't play with her, without some form of apology. But Paladin wasn't going to budge, and so the game was over, ruined by Paladin's power trip. TLDR, lawful stupid Paladin goes on a crazy power trip, tries to murder part of the party, threatens to murder the other, and then a surprised Pikachu face when we expressed that we didn't like what they had done, and claims that it's what their character would do, leading to the campaign going into permanent limbo. Even as a Paladin sister, it is up to the DM to stop certain behaviors, and the Paladin was showing quite a lot. They were obviously antagonizing the players throughout the whole thing, even getting up to the point of attacking them, almost killing one of them, and would continuously say that everyone was lower because she was chosen, or everything else was lower because she was chosen. But on the other side, the DM seemed to be in a really amazing one without all that. They had the story, the encounters, and the connections between the characters. They really planned it out. Even let them work on their own plans, letting them split up, work on other things. They even talked about how the players actually showed progression in their arcs. Some DMs don't really want the players to do that type of stuff because it causes them to fall off their railroaded storyline. But this DM didn't seem to be like that. There are more comments from other players, including the OP's husband, and it does give more insight to what was going on within the game. But that's all for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye!